review a little bit. 5 W's. Remember, this is very different than what you do in English class. These are statistical 5 W's, and this is what I'm looking for. Whenever I give you an article or something to do, or you find the article, you're going to always list me the 5 W's. I want them in a list. I wanted to say who, what, where, when, and how. You can figure out how. And why. Where, what. The 5 W's and the how, if you can figure out the how it's done. Sometimes you kind of have to infer it a little bit. Remember, the key to this guide is finding the what first. Find the what. What is being measured? And who is that being measured with? From there, look for the when the study was performed, not when the article was written. And sometimes they won't tell you, so you just say, not available. The why did they do this study? Okay, they usually tell you that. They're doing a study on the effects of cigarette smoking on your bladder. So, because bladder cancer is one of the leading causes of cigarette cancer. Cigarette cancer is one of the leading causes of bladder. Cigarette smoking is one of the leading causes of bladder cancer. So they're going to tell you in the article somewhere. How the data was collected, we don't always see that. We don't always know how it is. We can sometimes infer it. And sometimes they will tell you. If it's not available, you say not available. And how they collected their data. Again, your variable, this is your what that you're looking for. These are important. I want to know the what, and I want to know the level of measurement that it falls under. I want to know the level of measurement that it falls under as well. Okay? So these are your 5 W's. And you're going to give them to me every time either I give you an article to find or you find an article. I find that if you get these 5 W's, the rest of the article falls into place. Also, when we do articles, don't feed me back with, if I ask for a summary, don't feed me back what's in the article. Summarize means in your words. So I don't want to see you take like a sentence from the beginning, a sentence from the middle, a sentence from the end. And that's your summary. If you're confused about how to do a summary, one good way is we need one more? Okay. One good way is read every paragraph and just come up with one sentence for each paragraph in your words. Not the words of article. Okay. And okay, guys, excuse me, but when the late bell rings, you're on my time. My time. Okay. Just because I'm changing the screen doesn't mean break into your own conversations here. Okay. Here's a good one to walk through. It says sampling step by step. The assignment for this group said, conduct your own sample survey to find out how many hours per week students at your school spend watching TV during the school year. Let's see how many we might do this step by step. So the first thing they do is look at their population and the parameters. They identify the W's of the study. The who is the population and the associated sampling frame. Who would that be, the population? If we did this, say we did this, I gave this to you to do. Who would your population be? But you talk a heck of a lot when I'm not working up here. Kevin, who's the who? What population are we looking at? Of your high school, right? If I'm giving this to you to find out the students at your school, so your population is all the students at the school, would it be difficult to sample, to get a questionnaire out to every student? Probably. So therefore, they're looking at the associated sampling frame with it. The what identifies the parameters of interest and the variables measured. What are we measuring?
How many hours watch TV?
Per? How many hours? Good. How many hours per week do students watch TV during the school year? What level of measurement is how many hours? What is it? No? Nominal, ordinal, interval, ratio? Ratio. Can I say I watch TV? Can I say Matthew watches TV twice as much as his brother? Yeah. Okay. The how, the when, and the where are given by the sampling plan. How I will do this, I have to come up with a way to do this, to get a sample first of my high school students, and then when I will do this, and where will I go to do this. Often thinking about the why will help you see whether your sampling frame and your plan are adequate to learn about your population. You have to think about how I'm going to collect this, what I'm going to do with this, where I'm going to go to get this information. So you start with your sampling plan. You know your population. You want to randomly get a sample that represents every student in this high school. So you specify which sampling method and sampling size, this is important, sampling size, and you specify how the sample was actually drawn, what is your sampling frame. The description should, if possible, be complete enough to allow someone to replicate this procedure. Remember, replication is one of the things you want to do. Of course, in your little high school thing, you may not have the time or the ability to replicate, but in a bigger scale situation, we would have to replicate. Okay. A good description of the procedure is essential even if it could never practically be repeated. Terms like random sampler, I can't talk today, cluster sample, stratified sample, often will come up when you start discussing this. A good way to find your sample, I could do systematic even. I could label every student in the school and take every 10th student. I could go through and take, I don't know if I would want to do a cluster. A cluster would be like every sophomore, every junior, just one group and exhaust that group. Stratified might be a good way to sample. Why would stratified be a good way to sample your high school?
You see the different freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and
Mm-hmm.
seniors.
You get a little bit of everybody. What happens to seniors? Do you find yourself watching TV as much as you did when you were a freshman?
No.
Because usually you have school, you have sports, and a lot of you work, right? So by the time you come home, you're exhausted. You barely turn on the TV before you go to sleep, right? So a freshman who doesn't work yet may watch more TV than a senior. So you want a good sampling thing here. Okay. The sampling practice. Okay, specify when, where, and how the sampling was performed. Okay, so now let's take a look at what they did for this. I don't want to jump too far ahead. We talked about our population. They took their population, they took their students at their school, they obtained a list of all the students currently enrolled, and they used it as a sampling frame. The parameter of interest, number of hours watched per week of TV. And when they attempted to measure by asking the students how much TV they watched the previous week. So when I'm interviewing you today, I say, how much TV did you watch in total last week? Even that's a little bit difficult to get, because what happens is your students will say, I don't know how much TV I watched last week. That was last week. So you have to give them time to digest the thought and to calculate how much TV they did. And you don't want to get bogus answers, because that really skews your results. The sampling plan, they decided against stratifying by class or sex. We selected a simple random sample of 200 students from our list. We obtained a list of random digits, matched it to an alphabetically arranged list of students, and selected all the students who were assigned a 4. This method generated a sample of 212 students from a population of 2,133 students. That's what they did to get their sample. So now they're sampling practice. They handed out a survey. They wrote up a survey. The survey was taken over a period of October 15th to October 25th. About 10 days they did the survey. Well, they kind of did a little bit of different. When they did this, they signed random digits, and instead of matching it to like a random number generator, then they did a systematic thing. They kind of combined it, but they randomly picked, I'll take the number 4. Yeah. They kind of did a little bit of both, but as long as it's random, that's fine. And that's good you saw that. So the survey was taken over 10 days. Surveys were sent to selected students by email with requests that they also respond back by email. Students who could not be reached by email were handed the survey in person. So if you're doing this, you come up with your survey. You ask, how many hours last week did you watch TV? Every student here has an ID. Every student has you're on the Newburgh system website with an email, right? So if I have my list of 212, like kind of think about our school, how we would do it. If I have my list of 212 students, I would then get the email for every one of those, and I would send out a little email introducing myself, saying we're taking a survey to find out the number of hours watched by students per week, and would you please take the survey and tell us how many hours last week you watched TV. Hopefully, they would respond back. By using your email through school, you know they're getting it. Hopefully, they look at your email. I don't know how often you guys look at your email, but I know. The school one I do, because I get a lot of other notes, but I'm not sure how often you guys do. But a 10-day period might catch you in that 10-day period. So now, there's summary and interpretation. This report should include a discussion of the elements. In addition, it is a good practice to, and it's on the other side, sorry, discuss any special circumstances. Professional polling organizations report the when of their samples, but will also note, for example, any important news that might have changed a respondent's opinion during the sample process. This is really important. For example, in this survey, a major news story or a sporting event might change students' viewing behavior. What could also, that was on TV recently, affect your answers to this? The end of the summer. The Olympics. The Olympics. I probably watched more TV in one week than I have in my entire life. I love the Olympics. So I have the TV on like all the time on the Olympics. So that's something to note, because that would cause students to watch more TV. Maybe it's another sporting event. Maybe it's the Super Bowl. Yeah, you would normally not watch TV on a Sunday night, but you watch TV for your 4 or 5 hours. College football. College football is all day Saturday. Should I ask people to include college football? You know, things like that you have to ask them. Here's what they did. During the period from October 15th to the 25th, 212 students were randomly selected using a simple random sample from a list of students currently enrolled. The survey they received asked the following questions. One question. How many hours did you spend watching TV last week? Here's their responses. Of the 212 students surveyed, 110 responded. Maybe a little bit more than half of them responded. It is possible that the non-respondents differ in the number of TV hours watched from those who responded, but we were unable to follow them up due to limited times and funds. The 110 respondents reported an average of 3.62 hours of watching TV per week. They kind of gave you a graph, like a frequency graph, of the number of students and the hours they watched per week. So you could see their students, most of their students are watching very little bit of TV, and the higher ones have very little students in them. It's a good display. Isn't this a nice display rather than giving me a table or just telling me in words what it is? Isn't it nicer kind of to see a visual, a graph, an organizer? The median was only 2 hours per week. A histogram of the data shows that the data are highly right skewed. We call this skewed because your tail of your graph falls to the right. So we say wherever the tail goes, that's where your skew is. I don't know if you learned this in Algebra 2, but your graph is skewed to the right. What happens when you do this is your mean follows the skew. These little people out here, sometimes we call them an outlier. And what it does is it kind of drags your mean a little bit. So sometimes you look at the median, and that's why they said the median was only 2 hours per week. The median is the actual middle of your data. So they have to decide, should I go with the mean? Should I go with the median? Most of the students, 90%, watch between 0 and 10 hours per week, while 30% reported less than an hour per week. A few watched more, and about 3% watched more than 20 hours per week. So this was a nice process that they did, something that you could relate to. They sent it to the school, they took a sample, tried to reach as many kids as possible. Of the 212, about half of them returned their answers. All they had to do was tabulate them. They put it on a graphic organizer, and they displayed that graphic organizer. So that's kind of a nice step-by-step. Kind of see how this works? Not bad. And with technology, emails. Emails for school are very safe to do. Everybody is assigned an email in here. It's better than using somebody's personal email because technically, at least for a school, you have to get on your school website, or it comes to your phone, or it comes somewhere. You have to get that. You have to put your ID into it. It's not like your personal ID that maybe your personal one that somebody else is looking at too. Usually you're the one that looks at your school. So that's another good way to do it. Would be another good way to get surveys out in a school this size. How can I do another set of surveys? Sarah?
Maybe you could be in the cafeteria or something and have like they come up to you or you go up to a couple people.
So, say in your cafeteria, could you maybe do like a systematic every fifth person that walked in, hand them a survey? You could do that. You're depending upon like being there and that every student has a lunch, and then hopefully they're not responding twice, right?
Randomly select only
You,
and let the teacher.
that's another good way. Randomly select homerooms because then you're sure that you're not getting different kids, the same kids, different times. You could do it in the English classes. Everybody has an English class in school, right? Not everybody has a math class. Social studies class, probably, because you have to take them as seniors. You could put them in a social studies class, ask different social studies, randomly pick a cluster, that would be your cluster of your social studies people, right? So there's a multitude of ways to get this. So this was kind of a nice thing, just to go step by step so that you could kind of see what we're doing with it. Does it make sense? It's a small scale, and it was a quick turnover. They gave the survey out. They wrote the survey, which was one question. So That was easy. They weren't leading them. How many hours did you spend watching TV last week? They took into account what would be happening. Pick your previous week and tell me what you watched. Okay, so it's kind of a nice way to set up a survey and follow with